Incredible moment, another open to the cameras moment in the Oval Office, meeting with the South African president, President Trump there. A very open conversation. At one point, the president's staff playing out a video showing these claims of genocide in South Africa, which its leader has refuted. An amazing moment, Trace, and welcome everybody. I'm Sandra Smith in New York, to watch this in real time.
Yeah, and I'm Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles. John Roberts has the day off. This is America Reports. It really was fascinating because it became this kind of very congenial press conference between the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as the President Trump. And they had golfers, Ernie Els, Retief Goosen from South Africa, and it was very fun. And then they played the video, Sandra, of these allegations, the video of these groups, including groups that Elon Musk has pointed out, like the economic freedom fighters, that believe that there is genocide, that have called for genocide in South Africa, this time against white farmers. President Trump has given those farmers refugee status. He was asked a question about whether he believes there is genocide, and he said he didn't know, but he clearly is concerned that some white farmers in South Africa are being targeted because he has done many things to try and alleviate those harms. Another moment of
transparency from this White House, the promised transparency. This went for about an hour and 6 minutes. Trace, let's bring in Peter Doocy, our White House correspondent, is standing by. Not only did they play out the video, Peter, but also talking about the G20, President Trump saying he feels it's important to them for South Africa to look good at the G20. He at one point held up copies of articles about South Africans saying these are deaths. What is the reaction so far there?
Sandra and Trace, I didn't even know that you could dim the lights in the Oval Office, which is decades old. Seems like a place that would just have an on or off switch, but President Trump called for the lights to be dimmed so that he could show this multimedia presentation to basically call the visiting South African president's bluff. The South African president came here to say there is no genocide happening in South Africa. President Trump basically said, okay, well, then what's all of this? And he showed political leaders and opposition leaders in South Africa saying some very heinous and violent things for several minutes. And he just made the South African president and the rest of the South African delegation sit there in the half-dark room and watch it. And afterwards, President Trump did want to talk a little bit about trade, and his visiting famous golfer friends from South Africa got to speak as well. He said he has not made up his mind, despite the presentation that he had the staff cut and put forward. He's not made up his mind yet about whether or not there's genocide happening. That is something the South African team strenuously denies. And it's worth pointing out that is definitely the most awkward Oval Office meeting since Zelensky was here. It ended a little bit better because I can see the vehicle. It is not leaving. The South African delegation is not leaving early. They will be sticking around for lunch. But really, when you watch that, it seems like the Trump foreign policy doctrine is a lot like the old slogan for the MTV show The Real World, where people stop being polite and start getting real. And that's what we just saw from President Trump.
A couple of things, Peter, I noticed there. One was a good question from a South African reporter. She was asking about the G20 summit in South Africa coming up in November. President Trump said it was important that the United States be present at that. Didn't really commit to actually going to the G20 summit, so that's something yet to be seen. But I'm wondering about Elon Musk's hand in all of this. We know that he is South African. Elon Musk has complained again and again about that his Starlink satellite provider was not allowed to operate in South Africa, primarily because he is white. I'm wondering what the reaction there was and how much that played into the videotape playing, as you will, and the lights being dimmed in the Oval Office.
Yes, so the two things in order there. President Trump saying that the United States should be at the G20 doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to go, just that they should have a presence. And there's been some talk at the State Department recently about whether or not they should be engaging with anything early, because the G20 comes with many, many summits in the country, the host country, throughout the year before all the leaders go. So it doesn't necessarily mean that President Trump himself is going to go. As for Elon Musk, he has accused South African politicians of denying Starlink service because he is not black. He says that black business people are being prioritized over him. But what we heard from the South African delegation is they really want Starlink. They think that it could be a help to them in addressing some of the crime that they are dealing with there, and some of the gang issues, and improving business. And if they are going to be talking about trade, then it seems like they are going to work something out for Elon Musk to start using Starlink there.
All right, Peter Doocy, live at the White House there for us. Keep us posted. We'll get back to you. As the news warns, the vehicle, to your point, is still waiting there. Let's bring in special report anchor Bret Baier. He joins us now. Bret, great to have you here in New York. So first up, as we do continue to watch the door of the White House there, the point of the South African president's visit, they said before this, was to reset relations with the U.S. amid these claims of white genocide in South Africa. So the South African president also brought along these two golfers, as we mentioned, Ernie Els and Retief Goosen. Here was a moment where Retief Goosen attempted to follow through on that goal. Listen.
They live behind electric fences, you know, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
there's nowhere to live.
You know, both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult. But you know, the guys live a great life despite everything going on.
President says he has huge concerns, Bret, over what is happening there. He said he's heard thousands of stories of this type of violence. What did you think of what we just saw?
Well, first of all, you pointed out before, it is pretty amazing to see this level of diplomacy, this openness. We've now seen it a number of different times at long length, taking question after question, where essentially these behind-the-scenes conversations are right in everybody's living room. That's number one. Number two, I've never seen the video presentation to back up when someone says that's not happening, and then there's the video. I think that was definitely, planned to show the South African president what he's hearing and the allegations that he's seeing. I thought that the South Africans, by bringing Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, were playing their card because they know that President Trump loves golf, and listen to them as being kind of a moderating force between the government and also these allegations and trying to get to some solution. I thought it was fascinating that when the question came about the Qatar jet from NBC's Peter Alexander, the president wanted none of that, even though today officially the Defense Department accepted that jet for the U.S. Air Force. And then the South African president said, "I'm sorry, we don't have a jet to give you, a plane to give you." I thought it was all fascinating, and it could be an interesting thing whether the president does go to the G20 in South Africa.
I thought it was interesting, Bret, because you make a good point there when you had Ernie Els and you had Retief Goosen, but it was interesting that they seem to be very aware and very much concerned about the president's argument. I mean, their whole thing was talking about their families and the farmers they have in their families and the pressure that they have faced and the having to be behind these electric fences. So they seem to be very much on board that there is a problem going on in South Africa right now.
And I think that was the point. Also in the room was Johan Rupert. He's the chairman of Richemont, the luxury goods company, big billionaire in South Africa, and you heard him speak as well. I think though Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, Johan Rupert were all saying, let's keep the country together and not fall into a civil war, and to try to establish this relationship between the U.S. and South Africa and acknowledge the problems that are on the ground. There's another set of leaders that are really pushing, saying this has to stop, and really getting those allegations, those stories out there that the president did, a stack of papers on.
This obviously is all happening after President Trump cut off foreign aid to South Africa, alleging that these South African white farmers were the victims of genocide. The question, though, that was put to the reporter near the end there to the president directly was, is this genocide by definition? Is this what you are claiming is happening? Interesting, his response there. It wasn't a yes or no.
Right. He said he didn't know at this point. He was going to investigate more, and they're going to have talks behind closed doors. But the talks they just had in front of very open doors were really illuminating, I think, as you look at the outside of the West Wing. You know, every leader has to be prepared now for the possible Zelensky press moment. And I guess the South African president was aware that this could happen, but it was quite something to see it unfold over the last hour.
It's amazing to me to know what is the MO behind the White House. What's the idea behind this? What are they trying to convey here, Brett, when you have these press conferences that become these open forums for robust debate?
I think they're trying to say what we say to you that is happening behind the scenes is happening behind the scenes. And we are saying those same things to world leaders, pressing them on the issues that we want to press on, and also making deals when we can make deals. You know, I just finished for that Middle East trip, and I watched the president in each one of these countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE. And I think he comes out of that trip with the sense that he can do a deal with any country and press them on some things, but get what the U.S. wants to get out of it.
What are your thoughts on the recent events at the Oval Office? Was the U.S. president justified in showing those videos?